I think that the way we do rankings in cubing right now needs to change. If you go to the WCA rankings page right now, you'll see this, the world rankings for single and average. Now, these are fine, as far as I know they're accurate and everything, but it's important to recognize what this list represents. This is just everyone's single best performance, right? The moment when they had their best intersection of luck and skill. And there are a lot of factors that determine how someone will be ranked here. The biggest thing is, of course, just technical ability, right? How good you are at the event. But there's also how often you compete, what type of comps you tend to go to, how consistent you are, and the specific scrambles you happen to have received. So although this list is cool, I mean, it'll always be prestigious, this is where records happen, it's not a great system if you want to know who's actually the best right now. If someone is engaging with cubing as a fan, whether that's tuning into a live stream, watching comps in person, or even just checking updates on WCA Live, it would be ideal to be able to reference a ranking system that effectively communicates who the favourites are, who are rising stars, who are underdog picks, and so on. Even as a competitor, knowing how I rank relative to other people, regardless of what their PRs say, would be great. And especially as cubing matures, this is going to become increasingly important. When we start to see more complete career arcs, right? Someone getting good, setting some great PRs, and then quitting or just, falling off a bit, it's going to become more and more important to have a dynamic, up-to-date ranking system that reflects the current competitive landscape. This is something that every major sport recognizes, and it's why if you go to the websites for football or cricket or rugby or whatever, one of the very first things you'll see is this kind of ranking system I'm talking about here. They'll show you who's the best at the moment based on a rating designed to measure their skill. And this is what I would love to see for cubing. In my ideal scenario, on the front page of the WCA, we'd have a kind of leaderboard for 3x3 that shows ratings for everyone based on their recent performance. If you went to the dedicated ranking page, or looked at psych sheets or whatever, you'd still be able to sort by single and average if you wanted to, but by default also have this third option, which would be this performance rating. And I really think that now is the time to implement something like this. Over the past few years, we've been leaning more and more into the sport element of speed cubing. We've seen bigger and better live streams, there's the new head-to-head format, PSL and Monkey League are heading up, and cubing has even been recognized as a sport in China. So implementing a ranking system like this would just be part of that overall trend. Now, it's easy to make vague proclamations about what we should do or what I'd like to see happen, but if I'm going to make a video about this, I want to get specific. So let's outline exactly how I would design this system. The first and most important thing is just averaging results over a bunch of rounds to see how fast someone is on average, not just on their best day. Let's take all of their results from the last 2 years, since we operate on a 2-year championship cycle. Next, the most recent results are the most important ones for telling what someone averages at the moment, so let's do a weighted mean of these results. Each result is given a weight, which starts at 1 on the day that result is set, and gets lower as time goes on. Let's reduce it by 1% every day. That's the same as multiplying it by 0.99. So after 1 day, it's down to 0.99. After 2 days, it's down to 0.99 times 0.99, or 0.99 squared. After 30 days, it's down to 0.99 to the power of 30, and so on. Then, in order to calculate the weighted mean, we multiply each result by its weight, sum up all the results, and divide that by the sum of all the weights. And that gives us a simple weighted mean, which represents roughly what someone has been averaging recently. Now, this is a solid foundation, and this would already be a pretty decent system in my opinion, and would be much better than our current psych sheets for representing actual up-to-date skill. But there's a few more layers I want to add on to this. The first thing is I want to convert every result into a score using something like kinks, rather than just averaging the times directly. This might seem strange, but there's a few important reasons to do this. First off, it's already actually required to do some kind of conversion for multi. You literally can't average multi-results together in a meaningful way because they're multi-dimensional. Second, it gives a consistent rating system between different events. So a gap between scores of 5 or 10 or whatever means basically the same thing in 3x3 as it does in, say, 7x7. Then finally, and arguably most importantly, it makes it clear that this is a rating of people's skill, rather than necessarily like a prediction of what they're going to get on any given round. Those are very similar concepts, but they're not quite the same. For example, if 2 people have averaged the same time across their rounds, but person A has done that in small local comps, tends to choke when they're in finals, and has never set any records, whereas person B has set a bunch of records, tends to thrive in a world setting, and has, clutched up at the most important times, then I would say person B is probably more skilled, even if on paper the two people average the same. So I want to account for this by modifying the scores, giving them bonuses for some of these factors. And I think it just makes more sense to do that if we're dealing with an abstracted numerical rating system rather than a time. Like if someone averages 5.5 based on their solves, I wouldn't want to say, well, actually we're going to say that they average 5.3 because of these records or whatever, because no, they don't. They average 5.5, that's what the data are telling us. But we could say that they're rated at 70 based on their times, and we're going to boost that up to a rating of 73 or whatever based on these other factors. That just feels a lot better to me. So what extra factors are we going to take into account? I would look at whether the result was in a normal round or a final, and if it was in a final, did it score a medal, and if so, what colour? Was it a record of any kind, right? And if so, was it national, continental, or world record? And then was it in some kind of championship, right? And again, national, continental, or worlds. That gives us about 10 or 11 different factors to consider. And the way I'd balance these is a little bit complicated. Feel free to pause the video if you want an explanation. But the gist of it is that I'd boost certain results by a maximum of 15 to 17% based on how many factors are fulfilled. So a result like Timon's 5x5 average at Worlds was obviously a world record. It won the round, so that's a gold medal, in a final, a Worlds final at that, and so it fulfills all of the criteria. And so that would be equivalent to a non-record result in a normal round of a normal comp that was 17% faster. That might sound like a lot, but remember, this is just one data point and a weighted mean. So no individual result is going to skew the numbers by that much, really. Anyway, that's most of the system, but there is one more piece of the puzzle that I'd like to add in. If someone hasn't competed in a year or 18 months or something, it doesn't really feel appropriate to me to give them the same rating that they had before. Normally, if someone takes a long break from competing, they're going to come back slower, or at the very least, there's going to be a lot more uncertainty around their times. So I want to build in some kind of degradation to reflect that. Let's give people a period of, say, 3 months, 90 days, before this kicks in. That feels like a pretty fair window. Sometimes life gets in the way for a few months, even if you're an active competitor, or you might just live in a part of the world where it's not that uncommon to have a break of a couple of months between comps. After 90 days since their most recent round, though, we'll multiply their rating by something like 0.9995 every day. So after 6 months without competing, someone's rating would be down to about 95% of what it was at the time of their last comp. After a year without competing, it'd be down to about 87%, after 18 months, down to about 80%, and just before the 2-year mark, it'd be down to about 72%, at which point they'd drop out of the rankings due to not having any results from the time frame we're looking at. This might not exactly be a perfect way to handle this, but it feels okay to me. Anyway, with all that taken into account, this is how the rankings would look right now for 3x3. We have ratings for everyone, along with an indicator for how their ranking has changed in the last month. And this feels pretty good to me. Compared to the official rankings, this seems to more accurately reflect how fast I perceive everyone to be. We have Yihing and Xuanyi neck and neck at the top, then a big gap, but a pretty stable top 10 for the most part. After that, the gaps gets much smaller, so there's a lot of movement every month, but that's where we find a lot of the big names who aren't quite at that super elite level, guys like Dylan, Timofey, the 2 Lukes, or Andrew. And that's the system. So what now? Because this wasn't just a fun exercise, I really would like to see this get adopted officially. Now, that's not going to happen immediately, right? It'll take time to gain the kind of traction we need. The first step, though, is we need this to be hosted somewhere where people can easily reference it and see how it changes over time. And that's where all you come in, hopefully. I don't know anything about programming or how to build a website, but if you run a stats site, message me, because I'd love to get this added there. Also, if you're keen to build a dedicated site for this, again, please let me know, because I have ideas about how to do that, and how to showcase a stat like this while making it really fun and engaging. Lastly, if you have any ideas about the system itself, if there were any factors I missed or any obvious flaws with the system, please let me know. With all that said though, that's it for today. Hope you found it interesting. See ya.